Previously on that pattern, we created the pattern for the uppers and lining of this black Oxford shoe, cut out all of the pattern pieces, assembled it together, and we were ready to last and bottom the shoe. But we're going to put that on pause and move straight along to creating Oxford boots. So we're going to create an Oxford boot for this fit on this last using this mean form, which has a heel pitch of 4.5 cm. This video is going to be divided into two parts. The first part, I will just revise everything we did in creation of the Oxford shoe itself, and then in part 2 I'll drill down and show you specific things you need to pay attention to in creating boot patterns. First of all, let us trace out the mean form. Of course, ensuring that the ball point lies on the horizontal line of a right angle that I previously drew. Then I will mark in my vamp line, divide my vamp line into two, draw my quarter line, which is the line that runs from the counterpoint to the middle point on my vamp line, divide my quarter line into two, and then mark in my back height, which is 1 cm added to my counterpoint, and then draw my top line from the back height, the back part of my top line. The front part of my top line, which is actually my tongue line, connects from the instep to the middle point on the quarter line. I'll start my facing about 1.5 cm behind the vamp point. Now let's do those calculations. Our last length is 33 cm, so we divide the last length by 4, and that gave us 8.25 cm. Dividing it by 5 will give us 6.6 cm, and dividing it by 8 will be 4.1 cm. 4.125 really, but we rounded up to 4.1. Now let's finish off the top lines. And we do that by marking 4.1 on both the back top line and on the tongue line. That's last length divided by 4 on both the top line and on the tongue line. We mark 1/8 of the last length on the tongue line. Then we mark in 0.5 centimeter beneath the middle point on the vamp line and draw in the rest of the tongue just like this. Then from that same point to the point that we marked in earlier on, we draw in the curve of the top line such that the top line is complete, and we can curve in the front of the facing like so, and curve in the rest of the tongue as you see that I have just done. Then we divide half of the quarter line into two again, basically finding 1/4 of the quarter line, and from that point, of course, the width of the facing is also 1/8 of the last length. So we mark that width of the facing and draw it in, curve it into the 1/4 point on the quarter line. Then from that 1/4 point on the quarter line to the half point, a right angle coming down from that place, we find in the rest of the quarter. As you know, our capto is basically 1/4 of the last length, so 8.25 cm, and then we draw a right angle from there, curve it in a little bit, just to go in tandem with the shape of the last. So our capto is done. So basically, this is a revision of everything that we did in the last video, showing how to create Oxford patterns. The second part of this video, I'm now going to be showing you certain things, how you can take the very same mean form and design an Oxford boot with it. Of course, several of the principles that we learned in the Oxford shoe class are applicable but there are also a number of things that are boot specific. So I'm not going to dwell so much on the things relating to shoes, but let's talk about those things that are boot specific. Now, I say that these things are boot specific because they are references that we are taking which are beyond the last. So they are not occurring on the last, things like the ankle. The first thing is to draw a line from the heel to the ball and then draw another line parallel to that line from the instep. So you see this line that I just drew, it is parallel to this one that runs from the heel to the ball. Then I will measure the distance from the heel to the instep. Here it is 18 cm. Divide that distance by 2. Of course, that will be 9 cm. And then on that second parallel line that I drew, I'll measure in 9 cm. Of course, on your own last, you measure in whatever distance you got. Then I'll draw a perpendicular line, a line perpendicular to the baseline running through that 9 cm point that I just drew. This line, this perpendicular line, is now the reference from where I can calculate the height of my boot. I want this boot to be a 16 cm boot, so measuring from the feather edge, I mark in 16 cm. Then if I draw a right angle from the vertical line, I now have the top line of my boot. The front part of the boot quarter I will draw by drawing a line running from around the instep but also perpendicular to the baseline. Then the total width of the top line of the boot is half the width of my calf. So my calf is about 28 cm. So half of it is 14 cm. So 14 cm, you notice that it will fall just right around where a perpendicular line will join your back height or counterpoint. Let's finish off the rest of the quarter of this boot. We mark in, we start the facing about 1.5 cm from the van point, marking 4.1 cm, which is 1/8 of our last length. So that's 4.1 cm there. Now, if we curve that point into the 1/4 point on our quarter line, we'll get the curve and just do basically the things we did when we made the boot. Now let's finish the cap toe of the boot. Just like we did earlier on when we were talking about boots, we draw a right angle from the 1/4 point and then curve it in like so that it will be in tandem with the curvature of the last. Ladies and gentlemen, as you can see, the boot is done. Notice that point there is right angle from the half midway on the quarter line, and that's from where I curved it. I can now draw in the tongue. Width of the tongue on one side, of course, is also 1/8 of the last length, and just using that distance, I can basically use a pair of dividers to curve the rest of the tongue on this boot in. You can add in your eyelets, and basically for a boot of about 16 cm, it will take about 10 eyelets. So that's it, ladies and gentlemen. All that remains for me to do right now is to give a special shout out to Gashion Longji Guleng, who is a subscriber to this channel and who has excelled in applying the principles we have been teaching. Our next class is going to be on sneakers, so stay tuned. Also, let me know in the comments if you want for me to revise anything about Oxford. Till then, God bless you.